Ken, you must be feeling pretty gutted this morning, I imagine, to see the party you've supported for all your political life split.
No, I mean, we've all been expecting this. And you see, I remember back in 1981 when about 25 Labour MPs left the party. And they were led at the time by political giants like Roy Jenkins, Shirley Williams, David Owen. But 2 years later, virtually all of them lost their seats. They came down to about half a dozen. It just didn't connect. And so it will be some short-term damage to the Labour Party, undoubtedly. But when we hit the next general election, the issue is going to be, do people want Jeremy Corbyn's policies that benefit ordinary working-class and middle-class families, or are we going to go along with Theresa May and her devotion to the bankers and the international corporations?
Well, you say that the split in the early 80s with the formation of the SDP didn't do any long-term damage to the Labour Party, but didn't it do quite a lot of medium-term damage to the Labour Party's electoral prospects? After all, the Labour Party didn't get back into government for another, 16 years after the formation of the SDP, and the general consensus amongst political historians is that the split on the left contributed to Margaret Thatcher's electoral success. Isn't this going to help the Tories?
No, there undoubtedly was some damage done by that split back in 81. But when we were going into the 1983 election, Thatcher had just won a decisive victory in the war against Argentina. She'd managed to organise it so after 3 years of recession and 3 million unemployed, the economy was beginning to pick up. And then, of course, we lost the next two elections, I think largely because Neil Kinnock accommodated too much to the right. He didn't go into those elections with a good radical programme like Jeremy did back in 2017. And if you remember, back in 2017, most Labour MPs, 80%, thought we were going to see a wipeout, we might lose half our seats. They were so stunned to see that Labour had the biggest increase in its vote for 70 years. And if those Labour MPs had spent their time supporting Jeremy, campaigning rather than undermining him, we'd have won the 7 extra seats we need that would have put Jeremy in a minority government in Downing Street.
Another big difference, though, between the split in 81 and today's split is that in 81 it was about it was sort of democratic socialists versus social democrats, and the issues were nationalisation, Clause 4, Britain's independent nuclear deterrent. These were substantial but principled political disagreements. The accusation being made today by these 7 Labour MPs isn't just that the Labour Party is to the left of them politically. It's much worse than that. It's that the Labour Party is, to quote Mike Gapes, a racist and anti-Semitic party now. Luciana Berger has described the Labour Party as sickeningly, institutionally racist. I mean, these are really serious charges which surely are very credible coming from the mouths of MPs like Luciana Berger, who is herself Jewish and had to be protected by bodyguards when she attended the Labour Party conference last year to protect her from possible attacks by anti-Semitic Labour Party members. I mean, this particular criticism of the Labour Party surely going to be much more devastating than the purely political disagreements that seem to inform the split last time round.
Yeah, well, if it can be shown to be true, but I've been in the Labour Party, I joined the Labour Party 50 years ago this month. In all that time, I never heard a single anti-Semitic comment. I remember only one racist comment, that was back in 1970 when someone was denouncing the song Young, Gifted and Black. I mean, if you're anti-Semitic, you're not going to join a political party which was always had a much larger number of Jewish MPs than all the other parties put together. And the simple fact is, this is a good old smear, but when you see all the headlines, but then you look, what's the details? Where's the examples? I mean, I think
Well, didn't I just give you an example? Luciana Berger had to hire bodyguards to protect her when she attended the Labour Party conference last year, to protect her from possible attacks by anti-Semites. I mean, we've had numerous stories of anti-Semites in the Labour Party in the past couple of years. Over 200 cases investigated recently, it was announced.
Yeah, I mean, and about the last figure I saw, 47 people have tweeted something anti-Semitic. That's 1 out of every 10,000 members. And when Berger was at the Labour Party conference, I mean, all those violent threats you were getting, they weren't coming from Labour Party members. They come from people on the far right. Literally. And that's the problem with the internet these days. I don't waste my time on the internet because I'd be getting all the same sort of abuse that Luciana gets. The simple fact is, the Labour Party has campaigned against racism and sexism for decades. And the idea that we are endemically a racist party or an anti-Semitic one is nonsense.
What's your current status within the Labour Party, Ken?
Well, I resigned because the people who want to get rid of Jeremy were just protracting all this anti-Semitism stuff. And you actually look at what was said about me. I was accused of having a Labour MP, John Mann, went on television saying I was a Nazi apologist, claiming I'd said Hitler was a Zionist. I mean, if that was true, I wouldn't just have apologised. I've been off to the doctor to check it wasn't the sign of dementia. How can anyone say a man who loathed Jews all his life was a Zionist? But this lie went global all around the world. And still, I occasionally bump into someone who says, why did you say Hitler was a Zionist? The simple fact is almost all this stuff about anti-Semitism and racism is based on lies.
Don't you feel some small scintilla of responsibility for what's happened this morning, Ken? I mean, I don't just mean your own remarks about Hitler and Zionism. I'm also thinking about, the long-standing battle you fought to try and make sure the Labour Party is controlled by the hard left and by allies like Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. I mean, don't you feel in some small way at least responsible for this split in the party you've been a member of for almost 50 years?
Just look at the facts. In the 8 years I was Mayor of London, anti-Semitic incidents recorded by the police went down by 50%. Boris Johnson becomes mayor, and over his 8 years, they go up, they double. I mean, because I spent my 8 years as mayor preaching tolerance and understanding, not just for Jews, but for Muslims and Hindus. I'm really proud of the fact that after the bombings on the tube and the underground back in 2005, the police didn't record a single attack on a Muslim because of that. No mosque was stormed or anything else. And all my political career, just like Jeremy, I've promoted tolerance, trust and understanding. But, nobody ever wants to investigate, and I've never seen any paper actually look into why anti-Semitic incidents went down while I was mayor, but then went up under Boris.
I mean, don't you think that politically it's imprudent of the Labour Party leadership and of you to dismiss the things that Luciana and others have said this morning about the institutional racism, the anti-Semitism within the Labour Party as just smears? Wouldn't it be, I mean, we know from recent polling that something like 2/3 of the British public now think that the Labour Party is indeed an anti-Semitic party. I mean, wouldn't it be more sensible for the leadership of the party to say, well, these are very serious allegations. Perhaps we haven't been doing as much as we should have been doing. We're going to look again at our internal procedures, our rules about what we will allow and won't allow members to say without jeopardising their membership, rather than just contemptuously dismiss these people as wreckers who are just trafficking in the usual smears. I mean, that's not really going to do much, I don't think, to restore the credibility of what looks like a very wounded party this morning.
Well, there's endless headlines about anti-Semitism, but almost never examples of it. And the simple fact of the matter is that if I think back over my 50 years in politics, the Labour Party consistently challenged every form of bigotry, and whether it's against women or against any particular ethnic minority. And we were always the main political home for the Jewish community. And Jeremy has been fighting for exactly the same tolerance that I have all this time. The simple fact is, it's headlines and headlines. There's no real detailed work going on. But the good news is, now we've got a decent general secretary. We've got rid of the last one. And she's really done detailed work. And they've tracked them out of... We've got over 500,000 members. I think they found, over 50 or 100 that they need to investigate and check. Under our new General Secretary, that work is being done. But I think you're right to say we should look at our rules, because the idea that the General Secretary of the Labour Party could suspend me because I'm alleged to have said Hitler was a Zionist without even picking up the phone to ask whether I'd said it, but take no action against a Labour MP who's lied making this claim, I mean, those clearly aren't rules that really work.